Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another book review. And this is book 2 in the America Overrun series by John Grammer. And we have Mr. Grammer with us this evening. So we're talking about the book United. And we had just done Infiltrated, which is his book 1 a couple months ago. What a fantastic set of books. We're very privileged to have good authors and good books on this channel on a regular basis. And I'm going to say that this one caused a lot of thinking. Mr. Graham and I were talking just before, and I think we're going to get into it a little bit here. But he has an obligation, in his opinion, not only of entertaining, but also of instructing. And there are a couple tough questions that are asked in this book that, I don't think most preppers are prepared to delve into. And so it kind of slaps you in the face and it says, hey, wake up. You need to take this into consideration. And that's what I love about this book is we've got all different kinds of things, some things that I have never considered. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. John Grammer and let him have about 5 minutes to give us his overall idea and impressions about this book that is such a fantastic read. John?
All right. Hi. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This book, it's my second book ever, but it was a lot of effort. I really tried to put more effort into the characters and into some little nuggets of information that I think is important that people don't think about. I don't know what else I can say as far as that. I mean, there's a lot of... I'm into the third book right now, so I'm trying to determine what I say without giving anything away about the third book, about where the story's going. But it's progressing. It's really kind of like one book with that. They're like you could read both right after another, and it's seamless as far as that goes, the story and stuff. I don't know what else to say on it. I mean. Pretty.
Well, let's kick off. I asked him a tough question, and there's 2 events that take place in this book that I think are paramount. I think they're critical. They're very seldom addressed in fiction books, and I think it's a critical question that we have to ask ourselves. This group, JD's group, is lucky in the fact that they picked up a nurse. They have access to a trauma surgeon. They have access to things. They have basically found supplies in what's left of them from a hospital, a regional hospital, I'm taking it, probably a level 2 or level 3 trauma center. And so they have access to some things, which is going to be far more than the rest of us are going to have access to. And one of the main characters, Lopez, gets wounded, basically gets a gut shot. And even though they're able to surgically remove the bullet, and he looks like he's doing fine, then all of a sudden, bam, there's this change. And for lack of a better word, peritonitis sets in. And that doesn't take long to do away with the person. So how do you handle that? And the characters in the book have to handle a couple things. Number one, they thought they had things under control and they don't. And so there's this sudden loss. Number two, there's the emotional factor. I don't think most of us are prepared to deal with loss, even sudden loss, or even what we might call, as we were talking about, the loss of even an acute illness that goes untreated over quite a while. Though that's going to be something that's going to be hard for us to deal with. Of course, this also gets reinforced later on towards the end of the book. There's a battle that takes place. They're mopping up and trying to clean everything up, and they find one survivor who basically is wounded, and he's got a gut shot apparently with a .50 caliber. And so he asks that they relieve him of his anguish. And that becomes a very key point in the book as well, because it points out the fact that most of us don't have the wherewithal to do that. And that's going to be a moral decision. It's going to be very, very difficult to address. So you were explaining that to me a little bit earlier, how you intended that to kind of come out, John. And so if you would share that with the viewers, I would greatly appreciate that.
There's two things with the Lopez situation. Early on, it's been about 20, well, at least 24. So my first son was born, and my wife, 6 weeks after she had a kidney infection and went in, and they said it was all fine. Anyways, within a matter of a day, or they mixed up her lab work. Within a matter of 24 hours, she almost died from being septic. So, and I know that, you always hear about the people dying of a stepping on a nail or something, in the 1800s or whatever. So I everything that's kind of in the book is kind of that almost a personal experience to me on that part of it. So I wanted to point out that infection is real, and that's not something people think about beyond neosporin and amoxicillin, but also, what do you do with a situation where someone is beyond repair? He's not going to make it. You don't have a surgery. I mean, if you had state-of-the-art surgery center, he might, but he would have to be in the ICU and under all this, weeks of intravenous antibiotics, all that kind of stuff. And at what point of your resources do you have to make a decision between expend your resources at the cost of someone else's life, or what do you do? And so that was kind of that situation on that, but also I wanted to have they just got over this battle. They thought everything was good, and then bam, I didn't know at the point when I wrote that what exactly was going to happen, but I want the infection part was what I wanted to get out, and then I just kind of flowed on that. But it's something people don't think about. You just don't. There's the amount of the mental part. You read these books, and it's just, you got all these heroes, and it's great, and it's entertaining, and I like that too. And that's what I want to write. I write characters like that, but you also need to put in something real, something more believable. And that's what I was trying to do with that.
That static that we were working with earlier is come back a little bit, and so let me
turn off my headphones.
Yeah, let me greet people while you work on that, and
Okay.
I'll give you a minute or two. See what we can do here. So we've got I've seen Utah Mike, Gil, Gray Man Prepping, welcome. Butch Graves from Colorado, and we've got let me see who else. Little Lone Prepper, good evening, welcome, good to see you. Diana too, and Tammy Harder, good evening. Tammy, send me an email or something. Remind me, I need to give you a moderator status as well here shortly. Muskoka Oma, good evening. Good to see you. And I think I saw Jack. Michelle Mitten, Prepper Veteran. Wow. Welcome. Good to see you as well. Jack, Hill Summit Homestead from Queensland, Australia. Wow. Great to see you, my friend. Lori Cool, you're beginning to make it like a regular almost. Good to see you as well. Theoxorus, good evening. And Calvin Stevens from North Carolina. My bus buddy in the Army was from Smithfield, North Carolina. So when we were working at NSA at Fort Meade, that was only about a 6-hour drive from Fort Meade, Maryland, down to Smithfield, North Carolina. Of course, we always enjoyed, I enjoyed stopping in Rocky Mount because they had what was the name of that? It was a fast food hamburger place, Hardee's, I think it was, that had just great barbecue hamburgers that were just phenomenal. They had really good French fries too. So I have kind of good remembrances of North Carolina. I did some work for Arvin Meritor, and they are in Asheville. Gosh, is that a gorgeous place? I'm not that good on their politics, but gosh, it's a gorgeous place. So anyhow, phenomenal book. Some things that he brings up.
Okay.
Is
this better?
Oh yeah, I think so. So one of the things we'll open up the book, and so we've got a group of people who are trying to basically run away from the chaos and everything else. And the first thing they come across is some military equipment. And so the advice that's given there is ditch the military equipment because it may be trackable. So anything that you have that certain, especially electronic gear, some vehicles may be trackable. Now, I want to share my experience with this. When I was the HR director for an electricity power provider, a co-op, electricity co-op, we had GPS in all of our vehicles, so we could track and know where our linemen were and everything else. We had this humongous crane truck that would carry generators, and would carry, or it could carry poles, and it had a boom on it. And so one day that our pole guys, there were two of them, were in the truck, and they were gone all day. We couldn't find them. So we went and checked where they were on the GPS tracking. And one of them owned a farm, and we saw our truck going up and down the rows in his farm, just up and down the rows. And it turns out what he'd done was he was saying he was working, but he wasn't. He was using our pole truck to load up bays of hail on our truck and then taking them to market and selling them. So we ended up terminating him as a result of that. But I mean, that's how realistic what John's talking about having tracking devices on equipment, on certain, especially anything that emits electronics. Be aware of that everything you pick up is not yours. It could cause you more harm than anything else. Talks about people hide their keys in their gas cap. I had never heard of that before, but that's something that I will keep in mind. Talks about how important drones are. There are a couple of things that I have done on Amazon as a result of reading this book. Number one, I checked on the price of drones so that I could extend the reach of my observation and intelligence gathering in the area immediately surrounding my home. Directly as a result of your book there, Mr. Grammer, didn't realize how important that actually could be. I think another thing that really is important here on page 61 is the meeting and the importance of just getting to know people. And that's kind of reiterated later on in the book. We've got this one group of people, and we've got a business leader who thinks that she's a leader of people, and they're getting ready to go off, and they're going to form their own little enclave on an orchard. And she's trying to learn to be a leader. And so JD's trying to teach her how to be a leader, and as well as some of the others. And one of the things that becomes important is the meeting. And that's what I'm calling it. And that means gathering information about the other people and respecting their skills and capabilities. Can you take us a little bit deeper into that, Mr. Grammer?
I went to school for business, went back in my white collar days. The way that the people who were trying to mentor me as a manager and as a business leader, I thought they were ridiculous. They basically told me to rule through fear. They told me the first thing to do is to fire someone because they won't respect me. And they always got mad at me when I would ask them, like, you need to do this task, and no one could achieve it. And I would just go do the task because, I could do it. I could show them that I could do it. And they didn't like that leading through example. They wanted, you don't put yourself down on their level. It's just like the class system with politics and things like that. Well, when you're dealing with people, how do you motivate someone when money isn't a factor? How can you motivate someone when money isn't a factor? And you do it through respect. And one of the best ways people feel respect is if they feel needed and wanted, mm-hmm. and that you respect their opinion. That's going to go a long way versus just dismissing someone. So one of the things is I always tell one of my mottos is I always want to be the dumbest person in the room, because then I'm not learning if I'm the smartest person in the room. And learn from other people. Like, you always want to have someone better than you to do something, and so you may, let's see, I'll take an example from the book. So Allison, the character of Allison, likes to build things. She's very construction oriented. So therefore the engineering of how a building works and stands and the foundation and all that stuff that goes into that gets delegated. She designs this stuff. She knows how it's going to work versus someone who can just throw a hammer. And by knowing your weaknesses and surrounding yourself with someone who has their strengths are your weaknesses, you become unstoppable in business, in life, in a situation like this. And I kind of wanted to put that part of it in the book. I want a little bit of leadership that I learned throughout my life on leadership, because a lot of the business schools teach you wrong. And when you can't just throw, hey, I'll give you a bonus or whatever else, if you do this, sell so many, you get a bonus. When that doesn't matter, then, that's kind of what I did. And so that's why that conversation is in the book, is to kind of get people thinking about their group, that if they have a mag, or if they're thinking of forming a mag, how are you going to do that aspect of it?
And there's also the unknown. So a lot of times we'll say, we need something done, and everybody says, I don't know how to do that. And then somebody says, well, I'll give it a try. They don't know that they can do it because they haven't done it in the past. So it's an unknown. But as they go through it, they have the wherewithal to learn how to do it. And so, we've got that situation happening with the group that's setting up in the orchard, where they're basically trying to reconstruct the quarry, where the main group is. They're trying to reconstruct that and build an outhouse, a shower facility, domiciles, and everything else. And so now it's learning by doing. And so that becomes a critical part of it as well. You kind of have a basic infrastructure, or a basic knowledge, basic understanding, but then you have to kind of tweak that as you go along. So having that meeting and understanding everybody's strengths, weaknesses, and everything else is going to be critical. Let me see. Prioritize your scrounging. And so he divides it up into 3 different things when you're going out to getting things, what you need to take, what you're going to get later, and then the things that are someday. So, if you come back and it's already gone, it's not going to have that much of an effect for you. But as you're looking for things that are going to be beneficial to you, that people have left behind, then you have to kind of prioritize. If you can't take it all at one time, okay, you have to prioritize how that's going to be done. Next month, we're reading volume 7 of Stephen Smith's book. And so that's on the Stonemont series. And he and I had a discussion, and he separates into 3 different things. And I wish I could find it and write it down, but he says there's stealing, scavenging, and I forget what the third one is. But basically, stealing is knowing that somebody needs it, wants it, and wants to retain possession of it, and you take it from them anyway. That's theft. That's stealing. Scrounging is when it's been left behind, and most likely somebody is not going to come back to look for it. So it's been basically abandoned. And then the third one is, I just don't have possession over it right now, but I do want it, and I do value it, and it is mine, and I would appreciate it if you don't take it. And how you identify and separate and everything among those 3 is going to be critical. What's your thoughts there?
I agree. I mean, there's a spot in the book where they relieve a dealership of some property, and with the intention of, if they ever get back to normal, they'll pay for it. And I think that's I don't put up. That's one of the biggest things in my life, is I can't stand someone who steals. But there's a difference between scavenging stuff and just flat out stealing it. If you're going to steal from someone, it's just unacceptable, especially when it comes to food, shelter, that kind of stuff that's going to make a difference in their life. And that's kind of JD's attitude when it comes towards it too. And that's a decision that one of the major decisions that it doesn't. That's one of the major things that he kind of hints at as to why they have this big battle. And so I agree. I don't put it together so eloquently, but
if I remember correctly, JD is specifically talking about the F-450s, right? And somebody says that we'll take one of the trucks you stole. He says
yeah,
they're not stolen. If they ever come for them, I will either return them or pay for them.
yeah.
And,
Rick took a couple of F-450s with the intention of having his farm pay for them if everything got back to normal, because they that's going to be one. I was thinking of like, well, what vehicles will be left? They're going to, most people that are going to loot are going to take the sports cars and all that stuff. They're going to rip those off and run them into the ground. But the big work trucks, they're not going to take. Those are going to be the most useful things, but they're going to be left. So
yeah.
that's why that part was in there. But yeah, I just think you see a lot of movies, you read a lot of books, and everyone just kind of takes finders, keepers, losers, weepers attitude. And I didn't want to not have them scavenge because that's going to be a major part, but I also wanted them to do it responsibly.
Amen. And for those of you who have been watching my Saturday Prepper Pantry hauls, you will remember that one Saturday I had some nail polish remover in my Prepper Pantry haul. And so that's 100% pure acetone. So why would Lee buy 100% pure acetone? Well, it's because of page 77 of this book, where they make their own chloroform so that they could do the surgery. So acetone is one of those key components in making chloroform. So as a result of this book, I went online and said, how do you make chloroform? And I studied for a couple hours on how to make chloroform. And I said, what kind of components am I going to need in case I have a surgeon or a medical person available to me? I have the tools. I don't have the knowledge. But I need somebody with knowledge to come, and I'll provide them with the tools. And then we're going to need some sort of anesthetic. And so why not use chloroform? That's what was used throughout the Civil War in the 18th century. You know, it does cause, is it liver issues or is it kidney issues? I forget which one it is, but
I don't know.
It is dangerous, but I mean, it's a choice between you either have it or you don't. You either live or you don't. I know a lot of people talk about, I have an aluminum frying pan in my survival kit. They say, but don't use aluminum because over 100 years, you're going to have aluminum oxide poisoning in it. I'm 72. If it hits the fan tomorrow and I last another 3 years, I don't think I'm going to be a victim of aluminum poisoning, to be honest with you.
In a situation like that, I think everyone's time is limited. So you just use what you can use.
So I want to get my stuff here. Starting page 80, there's a lot of stuff that goes on between pages 80 and 90. That's my bailiwick. That we're talking ComSec, we're talking communications, we're talking all different kinds of things. So in 80, on page 80, we're talking about don't use common terminology. Find a way that you have arranged ahead of time to come up with innocuous ways of describing common situations so that if somebody's listening in, they aren't going to understand what you're talking about specifically. They may have a general idea, but they won't have specifics. Then on page 86, they talk about radio checks. Wholeheartedly agree. At the top of the hour, turn your radio on and monitor for 5 minutes. And if nothing happens, turn your radio off. One of the things, and I think I've shown you, I'll show you. I got my radios right here. I don't know if anybody's going to be on the ham, but we can do let's start off with FRS and see if there's GMRS, see if there's.
Channel mode.
I'll put that on scan, see if anybody's talking on it tonight. We'll check out the ham radio.
Channel mode.
And there's only one repeater I can reach from my house, and nobody's on it. But I want you to notice a couple things. Number one, you've got this beep beep when you turn the radio on. Okay. So if you're kind of in an LPOP, that's a listening post observation post, and you're trying to be quiet and you've got your radio and you turn it on every hour for 5 minutes, it's going to make a beeping noise. Now you can program that out. But most people aren't going to study that ahead of time. Second thing is when it breaks squelch. That's going to be a very obvious thing. So you're going to want to have headsets. The third thing is when it does come on, I'll show you this. I'll do it on the ham radio. But when you turn it on, notice that you get a light. Okay. So and there's no way to control that. You can control the colors, but you can't control the actual light coming on. So you're going to have a light discipline problem at nighttime. So one of the things I think you do a very good job here with is talking about how are we going to monitor that. So keep your transmissions limited. You don't use as much power for your battery listening as you do transmitting. When you hit that push to talk button, when you push this button here, you're going to start consuming your battery at about 10 times the speed of what you listen with. Especially if you're and if you go high power, then it's going to be even worse. But I think that's very wise to have a set schedule where people just aren't willy-nilly talking on the radio. It's going to save your batteries. It's good for signal security. The third part of that is on page 90. He talks about ComSec communication security using cover names. Call signs. I tried to do a breathing treatment and oxygen before the meeting tonight. My COPD is really acting up right now. I apologize for that. Probably be coughing throughout, but trying to take care of it. Let me get another puff and see if that'll help. But communication security, he talks about, and then he talks about, and this is something somebody asked me this on one of my 1 minute videos. Where I said I want everybody to communicate on channel 14. And so one of the things that Mr. Grammer's done is in his book, the group communicates on channel 7. Okay. Channel 7. And then when the leadership wants to talk privately, they say rotate. And when they say rotate, that means go to channel 4. So the other people don't know they're going to channel 4, but they're going to a different channel so that they can have more personal interactions. I want to tell you, stay away from the prepper frequencies. Okay, channel 17 on GMRS, FRS, don't transmit on it. Everybody's listening to it. You're going to be giving away everything you don't want to give away. Transmit on a different channel, listen on that channel. The exact same thing that Mr. Grammer is advocating with his characters in the book. What other ideas do you have around communication security?
Well, the obvious stuff, it's not a telephone call, so one of the things that you can do, which I wrote into the book, is they're more expensive now than they used to be. But you can get devices and you can make your telephone a mesh network. So you can communicate and it's private on your airplane mode. But it's limited in range. These GoTenna was a company that was doing them for a while, but now they only sell to the military. It's basically what the military uses. And you can pick them up for a couple $100, but you need to have everyone in your group have that device, which is not very financially available to most people. But the biggest thing is you've got to have predetermined names for your landmarks and directions, things like that. Like you got to come up with your own code within your group, because if someone is listening, especially if you're in a situation where you're an observer, you're watching someone. If they're listening to you, they know exactly what you're seeing, and things like that. If you don't have some sort of just basic code of, nicknames or handles, things like that, that people can, even if that know what you're talking about. I try to put that in the book, but it, throughout, I kind of sprinkle it in there.
Absolutely. And I think, avoiding the channels that other people are using as a common channel, I say monitor it. Listen to what they're telling you, but don't tell them on that channel. Keep your stuff amongst yourselves. Page 93. Something that I don't, gosh, unless you've got some experience, you aren't going to understand this. But the lesson is to let the barrel cool. And so what's happening is there's a small firefight. And remember that every time you pull the trigger, there's an explosion that takes place. And that's at a very high temperature. So as that explosion and those explosive gases build up the pressure, they push a piece of metal out that barrel. Well, that piece of metal has got a little bit of friction, but it's also got a whole bunch of super hot gases that are behind it that go through that barrel. One of the things they did in the military was we have a 4-position switch, which is what separates an assault rifle, if you want to call it that, from the civilian sporting rifle. The civilian sporting rifle only has 2 positions: fire, which is semi-automatic, and safe. In the military, we have safe, semi, burst, which is 3-round bursts, and then they have full automatic. You don't want to do full automatic, because when you do that, your barrel is going to start to sag after a while. It's going to melt because of the heat. And somebody touches a barrel and gets burned because of the heat of the barrel. But I think that's something that most people, if you don't go shooting or haven't been shooting, you don't think about, is the heat that is generated when you pull the trigger. And, so handling a barrel, touching a barrel, not being aware of the fact that you can melt that barrel, all of those things come into play. And that's something that he pointed out that I just want to point out as well. Page 100, using a diaper as a trauma pad. Tell me about that.
Well, I have been trained I'm an EMT, or I was. It's thinking outside the box. I mean, what is a diaper designed to do? Absorb. Why not? Instead, if you have grandkids or kids that outgrow, you have a few extra diapers that they outgrew, put them in a Ziploc, throw them in your med gear. They basically is the same thing. So that's the kind of stuff that it's the same thing when people talk about with maxi pads. It's the same thing. It's designed to absorb blood and things like that. But I see so many people just throwing that stuff away when the kids outgrow them or whatever, not knowing that there still is I'm not saying save boxes of them, but maybe have one in the back of your car or something for that very reason, just for that reason. I taught a class years ago for one of the church groups about, how to make your own EMT kit, basically your jump kit, with things around your house, like what to use and things like that. And that was one of the things that I told them to do, is if you've got little kids, take a couple extra diapers and throw them in a Ziploc bag so they stay clean. Throw them in your med kit, and you'll be glad you did. If you've got anything that a Band-Aid or a couple 4x4s can't absorb, that'll do it.
And contrary to popular belief, do not use a tampon to try to plug a bullet wound. That is very bad advice. Don't even consider doing it. You're going to cause more damage than you will in the long term by doing that. You can basically plug a wound. There's a way for doing it, and there's a fantastic class that is taught by CERT. It's also taught in most fire departments. It's called Stop the Bleed. And you're basically going to use regular surgical gauze, and you're going to pack that wound as tight as possible by inserting surgical gauze into the wound. Don't use anything that's loose, free-flowing, like a tampon. That's going to cause more damage than what it is. He also, continuing on with the medical advice, on page 104, he talks about writing information about drugs administered on the person's arm. In the Army, of course, you do the red T tourniquet and the time you put it on. We also do the same thing with morphine. If you administer morphine to somebody, you put M in the time that you administered the morphine, and then how many vials that you basically used. But those we have the equipment. Everybody has it in their IFAC, and you have your individual first aid kit up here, which is really readily accessible. But that's not commonly done in civilian life. So that's something I think you need to pay attention to, is pay attention to the medical stuff in here is just phenomenal. It's great.
Especially if you're giving someone a narcotic or something like that, someone needs to know about it who's going to be treating them later.
Oh yeah.
You know? So that's the main reason why I did it, is because when I was trained as an EMT, we had charts. Well, you don't have charts when you're in a situation like that. In the Army, they write on their forehead, that kind of thing. So I kind of changed it up, put it on his arm.
So what it did was it caused me to take a look at I went up to Amazon once again and started looking for CERT cards, because we have a series of 4 cards in CERT. So we have green, which means that the person is ambulatory. They don't need medical attention. They can walk away. Then we have yellow, which means that the person can walk and probably needs medical attention, but they can wait. Okay. Then we have red, and red means this person needs to be seen immediately. They can be saved with proper medical attention. And then we have black, and black means basically that they're a Lopez, or that they are this guy who was shot up in the at the bottom of the pile of people, and that is make them comfortable, because there's nothing you can do with the resources that you have on hand to save their life. So those are the 4 color codes that we use. I wanted to see if I could get those cards, because those cards come with clips, and we can clip them on the clothing of the individual, or we can tie them to a finger or an arm or something like that. But golly, they're $2.50 a card. And I said, no, I'm not going to buy those. I'll just use construction
paper. Just use construction paper and some laminate.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do.
Just make them yourself, but use that same type of a theory. There's something that goes on. There's a character named Dalton, and I think, and there's a mistake made by the group, and I think it's a critical mistake. If you find somebody, well, let's talk about it this way. Anytime you have a group of people, you need a set of rules, okay? And then you need to answer the question, if somebody breaks the rules, how do we enforce breaking those rules? Okay. Now, we've talked about this a couple of times. We've talked about this in Stephen Smith's The Snowmont series. We've talked about it with Franklin Horton's books. And we're talking about it again now. And this is a critical thing. How do you enforce somebody breaking the rules? Do you banish them? And almost every time somebody gets banished, okay, instead of punished and corrected, it comes back to bite the people in the rear end like you would not believe, like an alligator, because that's what's going to cause, that person is going to want retribution. They're going to want some sort of getting even. And that's exactly what happens here. Although I think this is probably going to be one of the primary things that's happening in volume 3 is the retribution as Dalton and DHS come back towards the quarry. But I'm just anticipating that. But can you develop that Dalton lesson for us, please?
Well, it's actually going to go a different direction than you think in book 3. The Dalton character is kind of a narcissist, kind of always has to be, the credit has to be given to him. He's always think about me. But they didn't want it till Jack, he always says, his solution to everything is just kill him. As psycho as that might be, that's what he's just a cut and dry black and white kind of thing. And he suggests that to him, but they don't really want to do that. And although it could warrant that, they didn't think he meant to do it. It was just a mistake. And so they feel like that was more humane to do this to him. I did that as it's a developmental thing for Dalton to develop as a character. He's going to be a key character in the next book. And but it's not going to go the way people think it's going to go. He's going to try to redeem himself, I think. I'm still going with that, but he's kind of, he takes that time away as he's being banished to kind of think about things and kind of think, how can I make this right? But he doesn't know if he's going to yet, because it's all about him,
Well, there's certainly that interchange there at the end, just when he's moved up to level 3, from the reception center, and he has a discussion, finds out that everybody there was killed. And that you can see his mind starting to question his motives and his actions.
And that's kind of the key point of him. That's the key where he decides. I haven't written it yet, but that's the moment that gets him going, try to do something right by what he did wrong, try to correct it, more so than just. He's kind of one of these characters that he knows he's a narcissist, and he fights that throughout his life, trying to not. But you see how he's kind of an a-hole all the time. But yeah, then you can see he's kind of one of those characters. I'm writing him to kind of be one of those characters who's kind of an a-hole all the time, but yet you kind of want to like him. At least that's how it's kind of going in the next book, but we'll see how it ends up.
Well, most of your characters have been people you know and people you have, or family members or relatives or people you've had experience with. You did not know me at the time that you wrote Dalton, did you?
No, but he's
okay.
He's modeled after my father.
So there is no semblance between Dalton and Lee. Okay, I just want to let you know that ahead of time. Let me see. Let's get into those rules. So there are 3 simple rules. Everybody gets trained, and everybody carries, which makes sense. Everybody has to be prepared to defend the group at any moment's notice. Number 2, which is basically out of the book of Titus, and it says everyone contributes. So, there's a famous saying, I think it's in Titus as well, where St. Paul writes and says, in order to eat, you have to work. And, I think that's very, very valid. In any group, if you aren't contributing to the group, then the group has no obligation to contribute to you, and they can do that via food, shelter, protection, etc. Number 3 is something, and I'm going to give you an analogy here, and this is the way we did it in the Army. My favorite first sergeant taught it to me. And so we would, when you get fed out, the Army has 3 different kinds of meals. They have an A meal, an A ration, a B ration, and a C ration. A ration you eat in the mess hall. It's cooked in the mess hall. You sit down, you enjoy a hot meal right there in the mess hall. A B ration is they cook it in the mess hall, but then they put it basically in these big thermoses. Okay, you have 3 inserts per thermos, and we call it a mermite can. So it's mess hall cooked food taken out to the troops, and then they ladle it out of that mermite can onto your tray or into your mess kit, and you eat it that way. The third one, of course, is the famous C rations or MREs, and that's prepared in the field and eaten in the field. So when we would get B-RATs, MREs, what happens when it's 0 degrees outside and you open a thermos and you've got these steaming peas and mashed potatoes and gravy and Salisbury steaks in there, right? Well, if you're number 112 in that line, by the time you get there, I've had peas freeze to my mess kit. That's because I was last in line. So here's the number one thing that Mr. Grammer's really developed in this rule number 3. We would always line up by rank. The highest ranking person was at the beginning of the line, and people would argue over data rank going backwards. And then as soon as everybody was lined up with the most senior person in front, then the first sergeant would say about face, counter column right, march. So what that means is everybody turned around so that the junior guy in the file became the head of the file, and then a counter column means you're going to go up and do a U-turn basically and come back. So everybody, the people who were closest to the mess hall ended up being the last to eat. Those were the very senior people, and that's a very good leadership thing that John has put into this book, in the fact that the leaders eat last, and that means sometimes your peas freeze to your mess gear, okay? Because that mermite can has been open so long that the peas are almost frozen, and then when they touch your mess kit, they do freeze. But I think that's one of the things we have to learn as leaders is we are last. The workers, the people who are doing the hard work and the exposure and everything else, they're the ones who eat first. The other thing that we have to take out of this, and it's something else that he continues to rant on, for lack of a better word, he says it probably 3 or 4 times throughout the book, and that is everybody eats together. We eat family style. And that's how you congeal any groups. You don't have people off in their own little enclaves. Everybody's together. Develop that a little bit further for us, if you would, please.
Well, on the order of eating, it was kind of a rule that I set up when I was, I'm number 5 of 6, and it kind of went the other way. My dad dished up first, and then by the time I got food, there wasn't any left. So when I had kids, the younger ones got dished up first. And I did that so that if there wasn't anything enough, I would be the one to go without. And so that's why I did that. I think it's the most vulnerable people need to be served first, because what was the last part of that question? The
family style eating.
Okay, so the family style eating is kind of, I think it saves resources by having everyone fix their own meal. You're going to waste food. You're also nothing gets left to waste, because at a certain point at the beginning, you might have a little bit. If you can always fix more if you don't fix enough, but you can never put stuff back in a situation like this. And so if you say you make your own dinner and it's all you have, a lot of these places like Ready Hour and stuff, they come with like a 4 serving. It's more than one person can eat. So if you make the whole thing, then it'd be bad by the time you go to eat it the next day. And so I kind of did it more as a resources preservation on that, but also it gives, as a society, we have gotten away from family dinners. And therefore, I think that's part of the communication errors we have in people's families and everything else, and behavior issues. So that is a time where people can come together, talk about their day, state their grievances. I can't say it right. That kind of thing. Just that part of society that we don't do anymore. I kind of wanted to put that back in the book, because it doesn't matter if you don't live as a family and treat each other with respect as a family. If you have little groups within your group, there's going to be resistance. There's going to be, I read so many books where it's like everyone's mine, or they're give it away, instead of coming together. And that everybody comes together for food. I mean, that's just how we do it in society throughout history. Every celebration has a feast. So I kind of want, but the main purpose was to conserve food and to get us back to talking as a family, because that's when you talk to each other and that's when you get to know each other.
There's another fantastic little gem on page, let me see if I can find it here, 137. And it says, if you disrespect anybody while you're in line for food or gripe about the food, something happens. Share with us your thoughts on that.
You don't get to eat. It's just standard rule. I mean, I'm Generation X. Growing up, you didn't like the food. You griped about the food. You didn't eat. That was it. Everyone's kind of softened that rule now, but that was the way it used to be, is you just didn't bitch. And I think that's important, especially you don't fight over food. That's the main thing you don't do in a group, is you don't fight over food. Just like there's 2 things I told my wife when we got married with the kids. I said, I will never get mad or discipline the kids. Oh, we're not going to talk about food issues with the kids. And we're not going to talk about bathroom issues with the kids, because that develops other issues down the road. And so, but it's just, food eating is a very contentious thing in a lot of these books, and in a situation like that where people are lined up ready to eat, and they think that they're last in line, they think they're not going to eat or something. It gets contentious if, oh, he got more than me, or whatever, he's smaller than me, I should get more, and that kind of stuff. And so I just see it being a big thing that doesn't need to happen. And so you set that rule right now and right fast. If you cause problems during mealtime that has to do with the food, you don't get to eat the rest of the day.
And I would modify that just one small bit, and that is, if it happens in the evening meal, that's nothing big. So I would say you don't get to eat the next 2 meals, and that way
Yeah.
that carries over into the next day. Great idea, fantastic. Thank you for having that there for us to. That's one of those little things, that causes a society to be a little bit more kinder, polite, and respectful of each other. When we say, another one of those life stories. When I was the mess officer for the 307th MI Battalion in Flak Kaserne in Stuttgart, Germany, and our cooks, the military cooks, they work their tails off. You work one day, so everybody's there for the lunch meal because that's the big meal in the military, and so both crews are there to serve lunch. Then one crew gets off and goes home, and the other crew does the dinner meal. Now, whoever does the dinner meal and cleanup has to live with that because they come in the next morning and they do the breakfast meal and the lunch. So they've got to live with the filth that they leave if they decide to leave early. So that's number one. But these cooks, they're working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and they don't get days off. If they do, it's very sporadic. So when I left that unit as a mess officer, I took a case of beer into both crews, and I thanked them. I said, guys, I know you catch nothing but grief at the serving line. It's not mom's food. It's Army food. It's nutritious. You do the best you can with what you got. Thank you from the bottom of my heart because I know you gave it everything you had. Well, when I was teaching at the MI Officer Advanced course at Fort Huachuca, I was teaching a class on code breaking, and the brigade commander came in, and he told me, Chief, when are you going to put your students on break? And I said, probably about 15 minutes, sir. He says, we'll put them on break now, and they give them a half-hour break. I said, yes, sir. So he said, and I need you in Major Kimura's office. And oh, crap, what did I do wrong? So I went into Major Kimura's office, and here it was all set up. They had happy birthday, and they had a cake, and they had bug juice, which is what we call Kool-Aid. They had coffee. And there was this full sheet, happy birthday, Chief, my last name, on the table, and they were cutting it up and serving it out. And there was this cook there, standing there, having a birthday party for me. And I couldn't figure it out. And I looked and I said, I know you. She says, yeah, you were our mess officer in Stuttgart. You're the only person to ever give us anything for our hard work. And so what you do to the cooks comes back to you later. If you take care of them and you're kind to them, they will go out of their way to repay that, either with finding a way to make the food better, finding a way to give you a little bit more, finding a way to make your life a little bit more comfortable. If there's one person you want to treat right, treat the cooks right. Those are the people you really have to make sure you take care of. Sorry for that diatribe. Let me see. Oh, you give an idea on page 145 on a whole bunch of different survival things that you recommend that people have, and white beans, bouillon, veggies, and things like that. Can you? What got you turned on to that, and how'd you come up with that list?
Just wrote it. Really, no. I mean, everybody had the rice and beans is kind of the staple of, the first thing preppers buy a lot. But how are you going to eat beans? I mean, you got to figure out something. So you always bouillon cubes is one of the best flavorings you can have, and it lasts forever. Or some sort of stock like that if you're not making, But it was just something so the character Anne is kind of based off of my oldest daughter. And it's just something I thought, well, and she's made several meals when it was her night to make dinner before she got married and moved out. And just things that she just go down to the food storage room and just put some stuff together. And that she never made that, but that's kind of something she would make. It's basically like she makes a soup like that, but she adds hamburger to it, and it's really good. And so I just kind of, you're going to have a number 10 can of dried vegetables. Most people do that prep. The bouillon cubes, everyone has some sort of beans, white beans, or and then you're going to make a soup because it's going to go further. In soup, though, you you just add more water if you need it. A stew or a soup, you just add more water if you need it to go further, kind of thing. And they needed to feed more people than they're used to feeding. So it was kind of one of those things where I got you. I know what to do.
For 2 years, this group has been hearing me say that I think that in a post-apocalyptic world, we're going to be living off of stews, soups, and chowders. And
Exactly.
I think that's going to be the most effective and efficient way to cook.
Well, you get, 4 potatoes and a couple of carrots, and you get a pound of meat that you can feed a lot more people than putting that on a plate as a steak dinner,
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mr. Grammer, for being here as well. You've given so much of your time. I greatly appreciate it. He offered me a pair of autographed books to give away. And so YouTube has changed. We can't use those giveaway tools anymore and all that kinds of stuff. They've kind of changed how they do the giveaways. So we were talking, and I said, well, one of the things I would like for you to do is write down a number on a sheet of paper there. And I guess, did you do one between 1 and 50?
Yeah, 1 and 50.
Okay, so what he did was he wrote down a random number between 1 and 50. And I'm going to ask you to put a number and then 1 entry per person in the chat. And then we'll go back and look for the number that's closest to the number that he has written down. And you're going to have a pair, Volume 1, Infiltrated, Volume 2, United, autographed to you from him and mailed to you from Mr. Grammer. So you will have an autograph set of the first 2 books of the America, what is it, Overrun, America Overrun series. Okay, so Phioxerus starts off with 42. I've got 56 minutes and 46 seconds in, so I'm going to give you until 57 and a half minutes. So we got another 40 seconds to get these entered in. How many people we have? We should have 16 entries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we got 15 more seconds. 13, 14, and 10 more seconds. Okay, so we're going to cut it off with Butch Graves at 12. So what'd you choose for a number there, Mr. Grammer?
I'll have to look. 32.
32. So Muskoka Oma's at 35. Calvin Stevens is at 35. Holly Ivins, 32. Way to go. So Holly, would you do me a favor, please? Send me, do you want to give your email address, or do you want to send it to me and then I'll send it to you?
They can give it to me directly. Okay. They can message me on Facebook if they want, but whatever works best.
Where should Holly Ivins send her information to you?
Just if she can message me on my writer page, John Grammer Writer on Facebook, just direct message me. With their address, I'll send it out tomorrow.
Holly, do you have that capability? Okay, we'll figure a way one way or the other.
If she can't, then we can just,
She can send it to me and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any closing thoughts?
Just keep up I try to include a lot of things in there that you can use. Book 3 is going to have a lot more. It's going to continue the story. So just, keep up on that and just store what you eat, or store what you use and use what you store. So you're always rotating. You're always coming up with stuff, but think about your comms, think about your meds, think about things. If you see of a situation that comes up in the news, just kind of put yourself in that situation and say, hey, how would I handle it? Kind of thing. And that's kind of what I do.
Great advice. Holly just came through and said she's going to email me and then I'll email it to you.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. So, well, thank you very much. Let me get our closing out here, and then thank you all so much for being here. We greatly appreciate it. Do me a favor. Make sure you get a copy of the book. There is a link in the show notes to his book. And I've done it wrong. I should also put in Infiltrated, so that for those of you who have not read volume 1, it's a fantastic precursor to 2. 2 can stand alone, but I strongly recommend you get both of them, volume 1 and volume 2. You'll get hooked on the series. I'm going to put those in the show notes so you can purchase those. Strongly recommend them. He's also sent me the link, I believe, for the audio version. So if you want to listen to the audio version, we can get that to you as well. But fantastic pair of books so far. So I strongly recommend them. Strongly recommend that you support him. Remember that he makes his living writing these books. And so the only way that we're going to keep him writing good books is if we continue to value his time that he gives to us here by purchasing and supporting his books and supporting his writing. So with that,
Thank you.
The book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. So do me a favor. I know you hear it all the time. Nothing has changed, but it's the way it is. Remember that we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key. Thank you for being here. Congratulations, Holly. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Take care. Bye-bye.